Nightmares don't always start with screams, sometimes they start with a glitch. And Doomsday is glitching on purpose. The moment those trailers dropped, I felt that familiar Marvel itch. The one that tells you something is hiding in plain sight. Not a plot twist, not a cameo, but a message. Because every trailer ends the same way. The screen stutters, the audio snaps, and a cryptic quote hangs in the air like a dying signal. People called it editing flair. I didn't buy that for a second. The Russo brothers even slid in that teasing little hint, look closely. And to me, that's basically a challenge. So I did what any sane person does when Marvel starts whispering in numbers. I went old school. Notes, tables, timestamps, cross-checking scenes like I'm decoding some classified file. And the more I looked, the more it felt deliberate. Not just because these glitches repeat, but because they point backward. Not to random moments, specific moments. Moments where the MCU's rules about time, fate, and reality got bent so hard. They may have cracked. And if the MCU is cracking, the biggest question isn't who's coming. It's what already slipped through. Let's start with the one that hit me the hardest. Steve Rogers. His trailer drops a glitch that flashes 124 and 02. At first glance, it looks like meaningless metadata, the kind of thing you'd ignore and move on. But then I remembered how Marvel treats time like a locked vault. They don't show numbers unless the numbers matter. So I pulled up Avengers, Endgame, jumped to exactly 1 hour and 24 minutes, and there it was. Bruce Banner, standing in the sanctum, bargaining with the Ancient One like the universe is a chessboard, and time is the clock ticking down. She doesn't just warn him. She practically pleads with him. Remove an Infinity Stone from a timeline, and you don't simply take power, you take stability. You take the thing that keeps reality flowing the way it's supposed to. And Bruce, being Bruce, tries to soften it with logic. They'll return the stones later, back where they belong, like borrowing a book from the library and putting it back on the shelf. Except the Ancient One's face tells you the truth. Timelines don't work like shelves. They work like arteries. Pull out the wrong thing and the whole body bleeds. But here's the twist that makes that glitch feel like a threat instead of a reference. Steve didn't fully restore the universe the way it was. He restored the stones, yes, but then he made a decision the timeline never planned for. He stayed. He chose a life. And I'm not saying that choice was wrong, honestly. It was beautiful, but it was personal. It was human. And in a multiverse system that runs on precision, personal is basically a virus. Because if Steve didn't return in the exact way time expected, then his timeline didn't just branch, it rippled. A tiny change, a tiny detour, but in a universe built on cause and effect, detours multiply. It also makes the EO2 feel sinister. Like we're being told this isn't the first crack. It's the second. Or maybe it's phase 2 of a bigger plan. And Steve being the one holding that clue matters. Because he was the designated timeline janitor. He was the guy meant to close the doors behind everyone. So if the door is still open, it's because Steve didn't shut it. Or because someone made sure he couldn't. So then I went deeper. Because that's what the trailers demand. Infinity War doesn't give a clean 124, but around 123:45, you hit Doctor Strange floating, trembling, watching 14 million futures collapse like sand castles. Only one path leads to victory. That scene isn't about probability anymore. It's about sacrifice, inevitability, and the terrifying idea that the future can be negotiated. Strange doesn't just see outcomes, he learns which outcomes have to be paid for. And when people say Strange planned everything, I don't think that's fully true. I think he was cornered. He saw a future where the Avengers win, yes, but he also saw all the futures where they lose. And in that flood of timelines, he might have seen something else. A shadow behind the war. Something waiting for the universe to weaken itself. Because after all, the snap didn't just erase half of life. It traumatized reality. It proved that omnipotence can exist. It proved that time can be reversed. It proved that death can be negotiated. And if you're a villain watching from the dark, that's not a tragedy. That's a blueprint. Then Multiverse of Madness threw gasoline on that theory. I rewatched it and landed on 124 and Boom Gap Junction, that eerie in-between place where universes brush against each other like tectonic plates. It's where the Book of Vishanti appears, floating like a myth that refused to die. Gap Junction is not a location, it's a scar between worlds. And if a multiverse is collapsing, if incursions are chewing holes through reality, then a place like Gap Junction becomes the perfect hiding spot for something that doesn't want to be seen. This is where my brain started connecting it to Dr. Doom. Because Doom isn't just a brute. Doom is a planner, a scholar of power. The kind of villain who wouldn't build a throne in a castle. He'd build it in the space between castles, in the crack between universes where nobody thinks to look. And if you know the comics, you know Doom has always had this terrifying relationship with knowledge libraries, artifacts, forbidden texts. It's not hard to imagine him turning Gap Junction into a command center, a cosmic bunker where he watches worlds collapse like dominoes. And that's when I started asking the nastiest question of all, what if these glitches aren't for us? What if they're diegetic, meaning they exist inside the story? Imagine the MCU itself is malfunctioning because something is tampering with the timeline from the outside. The trailers don't end smoothly because the world can't end smoothly anymore. The footage corrupts because reality is corrupt. That quote at the end isn't marketing, it's a transmission. And the numbers? They're not just references to old scenes to make fans feel clever. They're coordinates, pressure points, moments where time snapped and got glued back together wrong. And if someone wanted to rebuild reality, those are the moments they'd exploit. Because in the MCU, time travel wasn't a closed loop. It was an open wound disguised as a miracle. The Avengers didn't just go back and fix things. They proved time can be stolen from. And you don't teach the universe that lesson without consequences. Now let's talk about Thor's trailer, because this one is sneakier. The glitch flashes 117, and I swear, the second I saw it, my brain went straight to Loki. Endgame at 117 takes you to the Avengers 1 timeline. New York. The chaos. Loki in chains. And then the smallest mistake becomes the biggest disaster. The Tesseract skids across the floor, Loki grabs it, and suddenly the TVA exists. That one slip creates a branching timeline so wild that an entire cosmic bureaucracy has to show up just to mop it up. That moment is basically the MCU's multiverse origin story, whether Marvel admits it or not. Because once Loki escapes, the chain reaction begins. The TVA's lies unravel. He learns about He Who Remains. He kills the illusion of order. And by the time season 2 ends, Loki isn't running anymore. He's holding the multiverse together like Atlas holding the sky. Which means if Doomsday is approaching, the first thing a villain would target isn't a superhero. It's the guy carrying reality on his shoulders. But here's where it gets dark. In comics like Loki, Agent of Asgard, issue number 17 pushes Loki into a new form, God of Stories. Not God of Lies, not Prince of Mischief. Something bigger. Something that doesn't just exist in time. It narrates time. And when I connect that idea to Loki Season 2's ending, Loki literally holding the branching timelines like roots in his hands, I realize Thor's glitch might be foreshadowing a collapse in that tree. Because if Loki is sustaining the multiverse with his own existence, he becomes a single point of failure, a cosmic fuse. And Doom, if it's Doom, wouldn't even need to destroy Loki. He'd need to manipulate Loki, distract him, force him into a choice, make him loosen his grip for 1 second. And in that second, incursions flood in. Universes collide. The screen glitches. Reality tears. And suddenly, Doomsday isn't a title. It's a schedule. Then the X-Men trailer drops its own little nightmare. 111. At first I thought, okay, maybe it's just another Endgame call-out, but Endgame at 111 isn't some multiverse explosion. It's quieter. It's Thor and Rocket in Asgard, and Thor is breaking in front of his mother like the weight of destiny finally became too heavy to carry. It's a scene about grief, about time, about hearing the voice you thought you lost forever. And that made me pause. Because maybe the clue here isn't about portals or stones. Maybe it's about something else. Identity. In that scene, Thor isn't the god of thunder. He's a man who's terrified he failed. And that emotion fear of failure is exactly the kind of crack villains crawl through. The X-Men have always been about that. Not just powers, but pain. Not just battles, but survival in a world that doesn't want you. So I checked Days of Future Past, and around 111, you land in that dread-filled conversation where the Sentinel threat becomes real, not as a rumor, but as a future carved in stone. Mutants don't fear one villain. They fear the idea that the world will eventually decide they don't deserve to exist. That's what makes them different from Avengers-level threats. And when I found that, I started thinking about Secret Wars again. Because Secret Wars isn't just heroes punching each other. It's survivors fighting over scraps when reality runs out of space. It's communities being forced together, then forced to compete. And that's where the X-Men fit perfectly. They're the ones who've always lived in a world on the edge of collapse. If Doomsday is about universes smashing into each other, then mutants aren't just an addition. They're a warning. They're the human cost of cosmic disasters. And if you want to go even weirder, Uncanny X-Men issue number 11 introduces a cosmic being called the Stranger. Not a mutant, not human. Something outside the normal hierarchy. A being who views people like experiments. That concept alone feels like a shadow of the Beyonders, those impossible entities tied to the original Secret Wars mythology. If something like that is circling the MCU now, then Doom doesn't even have to be the biggest monster in the room. He just has to be the smartest one. The one who sees what's coming and builds a plan inside the oncoming storm. And that's what makes Doom so terrifying. He's the kind of villain who can look at the apocalypse and say, "Good, now I can rebuild." He doesn't fear the end. He uses it. Which makes the X-Men glitch feel like a countdown to extinction, or to evolution, a moment where humanity splits again under pressure. Then we hit the Wakanda trailer, which flashes 104 with that same glitchy shiver. Different language versions made it look messy, letters overlapping, numbers sliding, but when I lined them up, it was the same clue wearing different masks. Endgame at 104 is the moment the time heist plan is laid out in full. The Avengers don't just decide to travel through time, they decide to gamble with the structure of reality. They split into teams, pick points in history like safe deposit boxes, and assume they can take what they need and return it neatly. It's bold, it's heroic, it's also reckless. Because that meeting is the birth of multiversal consequences. Before that, the MCU's timeline was bruised but intact. After that, the MCU becomes something else. A story where time can be robbed. And the TVA used to clean up branches like weeds. But after Loki destroys that system, the branches don't get clipped anymore. They spread. They tangle. They become wild. And wild timelines eventually collide. Wakanda-specific connections get even more interesting when you rewatch Wakanda Forever around 104, where Shuri and Namor finally speak properly. It's tense, cautious, like two kingdoms recognizing they could either become allies or annihilate each other. And Namor is a key name here because in Fantastic Four issue number 4, Namor's introduction is a big deal. He's one of Marvel's oldest wildcards. Not good. Not evil, just ancient, proud, and impossible to control. So if the Wakanda glitch is pointing at 104, it could be signaling something bigger than Shuri. It could be signaling the arrival of the Fantastic Four era. Because Namor is a bridge between world, surface, and sea, hero and threat. And Wakanda is the symbol of legacy. Add multiversal collapse to that mixture, and suddenly Wakanda isn't just a nation. It becomes a battlefield for who gets to inherit the future. Doom would love that. Doom thrives on nations, politics, loyalty, pride. Wakanda is the kind of place he'd either conquer or manipulate into defending his vision. Now, the final glitch is the one that made my stomach drop. The Marvel thank you message, innocent, sweet, a little nostalgic, gets hit by one last stutter and flashes 101. Most people wrote it off as a countdown aesthetic. But Marvel doesn't waste this kind of pattern. I jumped to Endgame again, and at 101 you're near the Hawkeye time travel moment. The test run where Clint reaches into the past and watches his kid's baseball glove vanish and return. It's the first practical proof that time travel works. And nobody talks about how terrifying that really is. Because the glove isn't a stone. It isn't cosmic. It's ordinary. Which means reality itself is touchable. It can be grabbed, moved, altered. That's the moment the MCU stops being mythological and becomes technological in the most dangerous way. Because once something can be tested, it can be repeated. And once it can be repeated, it can be weaponized. So what if these glitches are the MCU's scar tissue showing? Steve returning stones, Loki escaping, Strange reading futures, Clint proving time is touchable, the time heist planning. All of it forms a single chain reaction that the Avengers never truly understood. They didn't just save their world. They taught reality that it could be edited. And once reality learns it can be edited, someone will try to master the software. That's why I think Doomsday isn't just a movie title. It's a warning about ownership, about control, about who gets to decide which timeline is correct. Because if timelines are branching endlessly, the multiverse isn't freedom, it's clutter. It's chaos. And a villain like Doom doesn't see chaos as a problem. He sees it as an opportunity to impose order. His order. A universe where the rules are written by one mind strong enough to hold them. And that brings me back to the Russo brothers' Look Closely. Because what they're really saying is, look at the moments where the MCU changed its own rules. Look at the moments where the universe bent and didn't snap back cleanly. Those are the wounds. Those are the entrances. And if the trailers are glitching, it might mean the villain isn't just coming. He's already here, hidden in the seams, rewriting the footage as we watch it. Maybe these numbers are a countdown to the exact moments he needs to steal. The precise points in time where the MCU's foundations were already weakened. Because if you're going to build a new reality, you don't start from scratch. You start from fractures. Because if Doomsday is building towards secret wars, then the real horror isn't that worlds collide. The horror is that someone will decide which worlds deserve to survive. That someone will take the chaos the Avengers unleashed and turn it into a throne. And when that happens, every heroic decision we cheered for becomes evidence in a cosmic trial. Steve's choice, Strange's bargain, Loki's sacrifice, Clint's test. They're not just moments, they're liabilities. And the glitches are Marvel's way of telling us the bill is coming due. Not because the Avengers were wrong to fight, but because the universe never lets you break its rules for free. It collects. It always collects. So yeah, the trailers end with a glitch and a quote. But I don't think that's just style. I think it's the MCU gasping for air. I think it's reality buffering. And if I'm right, then Doomsday won't begin with explosions. It'll begin with something quieter. A flicker. A skipped frame. A universe realizing it's being watched and rewritten. If you felt that chill too, drop your theories below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.